For a long time, scientists have known about the huge reserves of natural gas located in the shale formations deep beneath much of Pennsylvania and our neighboring states. What's relatively new is the advanced technology that makes accessing those very deep gas reserves possible. The harnessing of these massive reserves has made Pennsylvania a national and world energy leader. It's the role of the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection to oversee and regulate the extraction of these natural gas resources in a safe and environmentally responsible manner. DEP regulates the entire extraction process from the planning and permitting of the well site through the production phase and finally to the proper plugging of the wells when they're no longer in use. Before any type of drilling can occur, well operators must submit all necessary permit applications to DEP for review and approval. The two most common permits reviewed by DEP are the Erosion and Sediment Control General Permit and the Drill and Operate a Well Permit. The Erosion and Sediment Control General Permit authorizes the construction of gas well pads and their associated facilities, such as pipelines and compressor stations. This permit is how DEP ensures the protection of surrounding water resources. In addition, these controls are designed to contain spills that may occur. The pad itself is also large enough to accommodate the necessary vehicles and structures for drilling and fracking the well. The Drill and Operate a Well permit authorizes the construction and operation of the gas well. Most unconventional well sites include multiple gas wells, and operators are required to obtain a drilling permit for each one that's constructed on the pad. Now let's look at how an unconventional well is drilled. When talking about the process of natural gas extraction, many of us have heard the term unconventional drilling. But what does it mean? Unconventional drilling targets deep shale deposits, such as the Marcellus and Utica shale formations. Since natural gas is locked in the shale rock, it's not able to flow freely to the surface. Innovative horizontal drilling and high-volume hydraulic fracturing are required to break up the shale rock, allowing the natural gas to flow more freely. Fracking has actually been taking place in Pennsylvania for decades. However, horizontal drilling and high-volume fracturing has only been in commercial practice here since 2005. The operator begins drilling the well. Unlike a private drinking water well, where no laws govern its construction, an unconventional natural gas well must meet tough regulatory standards and be constructed to exacting engineering specifications. A typical unconventional gas well is engineered with multiple layers of metal pipe called casing. These are held in place by several layers of cement that is specially formulated to prevent gas, oil, or brine from impacting fresh groundwater. What makes drilling an unconventional well unique is its horizontal boring. Like most wells, drilling begins vertically into the ground. But as the drill bit approaches the shale formation, the path of the drill bit curves into the horizontal layer of shale rock and continues for as much as a mile. Unlike a simple vertical well bore, this technique allows the drilling rig to effectively capture the natural gas from a much larger area within the shale formation. After an unconventional well is drilled, the rock from the well bore, known as drill cuttings, is typically disposed at a licensed landfill facility. The next step is getting the natural gas out of the shale formation. Since the gas is locked within microscopic pores in the rock, it's necessary to break up the rock in order to free the gas. Hydraulic fracturing involves pumping large volumes of water and hydraulic fracturing fluids deep underground at extremely high pressures to create, then enlarge, small cracks in the shale. It takes about 4 to 6 million gallons of water and hydraulic fracturing fluids to accomplish this task. The fracturing fluid also contains sand that serves to hold open the cracks made in the shale rock so the natural gas can flow more freely to the surface. A typical blend of hydraulic fracturing solution contains about 90% water, 9% sand, and 1% of a variety of chemicals to help reduce the friction in the well bore and prevent bacteria from clogging up the pore spaces. Pennsylvania law requires operators to identify each and every chemical contained in their hydraulic fracturing solution and report this information to DEP where it is kept on file. While a lot of water is used in the hydraulic fracturing process, typically about 90% of the fluid that returns to the surface is recycled and reused to hydraulically fracture other wells. If the fluid can't be recycled, it's either sent to a licensed wastewater treatment facility or disposed at an approved deep injection well. In Pennsylvania, a typical unconventional natural gas well reaches more than a mile, approximately 5,200 feet, underground. In comparison, a typical private drinking water well is less than 500 feet deep. That distance between groundwater wells and shale rock is equivalent to stacking 4 Empire State Buildings on top of each other. It takes about 3 to 4 weeks to drill a typical unconventional gas well, and only about 5 to 10 days to hydraulically fracture it. After the well is drilled, it's connected to pipelines to transport the natural gas to market for use. The final step in the process requires the operator to restore the site by reducing the size of the well pad and planting grasses and other vegetation to return it to as close to its original condition as possible. During the entire process, DEP staff regularly inspect the site to ensure that all environmental laws and regulations are met. Given the enormous amount of natural gas reserves that are available in the Marcellus Shale alone, unconventional drilling is likely to continue for many years to come. DEP is committed to its mission of protecting Pennsylvania's land, air, and water resources, and ensuring that our natural gas reserves are recovered in a way that protects our citizens and our environment.
Hello and welcome to BotsIQ's virtual career panel with EQT Corporation. My name is Michelle Conklin and I am the Executive Director of BotsIQ, a program of the Pittsburgh Chapter National Tooling and Machining Foundation. We're excited to have you join us today as we learn more about EQT Corporation and the professionals that work there. EQT's history began in 1878 with its first commercial natural gas well in Murraysville, Pennsylvania. More than 140 years later, EQT's production has grown, not only in southwestern Pennsylvania, but also across Ohio and West Virginia. Today, EQT is proud to be the largest natural gas producer in the United States. Obviously, as their production grew, so did its number of employees. Currently, EQT has over 600 employees, most of which live and work across our region. Today, we are joined with 4 of EQT's finest. Before we welcome them to the career panel, I would like to share a little about each of them, as well as our moderator, a BotsIQ alumni from Charleroi Area High School. Our first panelist is Elizabeth Mabie. Elizabeth is the Director of Human Resources at EQT. Her favorite class in high school was civics. And after high school, Elizabeth earned her bachelor's degree in speech communication at Penn State University and her master's degree in leadership and business ethics at Duquesne University. Elizabeth's favorite part of her job at EQT is the diverse assignments and duties that she has an opportunity to work on. Our next panelist is Julian Carrillo. Julian's favorite class in high school was chemistry, which probably helped him a lot in his studies at Texas A&M, where he earned a bachelor's of science in petroleum engineering. As the vice president of production, Julian shares that he has 2 favorite parts to his job at EQT. The first is being a part of the largest producer of natural gas in the country, which provides a reliable, clean, burning energy source so people can live better lives. And the second is the opportunity to create a vision and strategy to transform EQT into the best it can be, which enables people to become their best and achieve their goals. Our third panelist is Stephen Coe. Stephen's favorite class in high school was physics before he went on to earn a bachelor's of chemical engineering from McGill University. Today, Stephen is the vice president of completions at EQT, and he shares that his favorite part of working at EQT is solving problems through innovative solutions and pushing the boundaries of what has traditionally been accepted as possible. Our last panelist is Joe Mallow. Math was Joe's favorite high school class. He went on to earn a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering from Fairmont State University and is currently the Managing Director of Permitting and Civil at EQT. Joe enjoys working with an awesome group of individuals that care deeply about what they do. He enjoys learning new things and how to do things better. For Joe, there's nothing better than being a part of the EQT crew. Last, but certainly not least, is today's moderator, Madison Huschek. Madison is a 2019 graduate of Charleroi Area High School who is currently in her 4th semester at Penn State University, pursuing a 5-year architectural engineering degree. Recently, I had the pleasure to speak with Madison and learn a little more about how she got to where she is today. Madison was on Charleroi's BotsIQ team for 3 years, serving as the team captain and driver for their bot Chad, her junior and senior year. One of her favorite memories, and one that I remember well too, was her senior year when her team won coolest bot in the competition. Madison shares that BotsIQ was a major influence in her pursuit of an engineering degree. It provided her an outlet to use STEM skills that other classes did not offer, and it introduced her to countless engineering skills and concepts that she still applies in her college courses today. BotsIQ also taught Madison a lot about time management and teamwork, since a BotsIQ team doesn't run without heavy organization and dedication from all of its members. Madison credits the Charleroi BotsIQ teachers, Miss Palander and Mr. Erico, as big influencers on her personally, and who helped her hone in on her post-secondary plans. Someday, Madison hopes to work in project management, in particular with projects that incorporate environmentally friendly design solutions into modern architecture. After my conversations with Madison, I have no doubt that she will have a successful future. We're excited to have her join us today and moderate this event. I now invite our panelists and Madison to join us and get the event started.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you for being here. Thank you to EQT for their support in BotsIQ for my whole high school career, and to all the kids coming up now getting involved. I would like to get started with a question for Julian, actually. Keeping in mind, the types of skills that students are exposed to during their time as a BotsIQ student, I was hoping you could talk about what skills or qualities have helped you reach your level of success in your field.
That's a great question, Madison. I'm glad I get to be the first out of the gate too. So it gives Joe and Elizabeth and Stephen a chance to see how this is going to flow. So with that, I think as I think about what STEM does for us and skills and qualities that help me achieve where I'm at today. I think first is just having gone through an engineering curriculum really trains you on having a problem-solving mindset first. So if there's something that's not working, something that's not right, how do you go about problem solving, and a little bit of trial and error and using some engineering to try and figure out a good solution, and then you put it in practice and see if it works. So I'd say that's first has been a big factor in my success. And then secondly, with that is understanding that not everything's going to go right all the time. So you have to be flexible and know that when it doesn't go right, how do you get back on track and help to achieve the results you're trying to get. So from a skills perspective, I think that background from an engineering side has really helped me do that. And then secondly, I think another thing that quality wise, that's really helped is really being focused on being a really good team player. And I think that's also an important part of any successful career. I love to read, and one of the books that I've read is it's by Patrick Lancioni. It's called The Ideal Team Player. And in that book, he calls it the ideal team player as being someone who's humble, which means they don't think too highly of themselves and they're more focused on the team than they are themselves. Secondly, that they're hungry, which means that they give their best every single day, regardless of circumstances, and they're focused on making themselves and the organization better. And then lastly is they're smart, and by smart they mean people smart, not book smart. And that's someone who listens to others and can effectively work with all types of people. And so those three qualities, when it comes to being a really good team player, were also qualities that helped me be successful in my career.
That's great. Thank you so much. Next, I have a question for Stephen. In your introduction, you mentioned solving problems with innovative solutions as your favorite part of your job. Can you give me an example of maybe what the biggest challenge that you faced in your career was and how you handled it?
Thanks, Madison. Yeah, that's a very good question. I think one of the biggest challenges that I've faced in my career is actually what I'm doing right now, and that's coming into EQT and trying to modernize the completions process. So traditionally speaking, our process has been very manual labor intensive, hasn't relied a lot on technology. It's really been done through the hard work and dedication of people on location. But that meant that sometimes it was prone to first of all, an inefficient process with people doing more labor than they needed to be doing, and then also leaving up some controls to human decision making. And as good as we all are, and as diligent as we all are, there are times and places where we can forget to do things because we're human and we're not perfect, where computers could maybe do something a little bit better and a little more efficient and a little more reliably than we could. And if you don't mind, maybe if I could share the screen, I can give you a couple or one really good example of an innovative solution that we tried out on our locations, where we took the traditional process of going from one wellhead to another, which is usually taking a whole bunch of pipes, disconnecting them and reconnecting them again, and replace them with what is in effect a very large robot that helps us move from location to location on the wellhead. So I'm just gonna hold in right now just for a second. And you can see here on the screen that machine that is moving up and down right now. Actually, let's walk through the location first. You can see on the bottom there's an orange and a white stack that you see near the center of your screen. Those are the wellheads themselves. That's what connects us to the subsurface. And then on the surface, if you see the big, long orange manifold that goes straight up on the right-hand side of the screen, That's where all of our pumps connect into our system to pump fluids downhole, like you said, like you saw in the introduction, where we do the hydraulic fracturing process. And in that then goes over to this big arm. Now, traditionally speaking, this arm didn't exist. What used to be there was just a network of pipes, these small pipes that you see on the ground over here, usually connected. And there were literally hundreds of them in this area. And we worked with a company together to try and innovate and do it differently. And this is a robotic arm that actually one person can control. He stands there with the remote panel and moves them from location to location and gets us ready to move to the next wellhead through both technology and then GPS positioning so that we can get there more efficiently and more safely.
That's incredible. Thank you so much for that. And you mentioned, you know, one of the biggest problems being decision making and, you know, human error, human relations. Could you maybe talk about what soft skills are and why they're important in your job in particular?
Yeah, I think one of the most important things to think about becoming an engineer is the soft skill of communication. You know, that's often overlooked. There's so many things in our world and in my industry that can be solved by just communicating better. You know, as engineers, we tend to get focused on solving the problem, making sure that we consider all the variables, put them together, come together a solution, and then implementing that solution. But, you know, the best ideas and the best solutions are really fall apart if you can't communicate how to do those properly. So, you know, there's a lot that goes into communication, a lot of soft skills. It's not just about delivering your message in an appropriate way. That certainly is part of it, but it is also being aware of who you're talking to, how they may be receiving that information, what they may be distracted by. That can be anything from ambient noise or where you guys are talking, people around you, friends that may be pulling their attention away, or something more difficult to see, which may be what they think about the idea in their head before they even know the solution. So there may be things that they think are the appropriate solution that don't look like your solution. And you have to be aware of that, think about that, and see how you can shape your message to that listener so that they will hear that message instead of rejecting that message, or instead of formulating ideas to reject your message instead.
Great.
Yeah, Madison, if you don't mind me adding on top of that, I think when you think about kind of what Stephen's talking about, you talk about from engineering, we typically focus on what you do, and even in the business world. So that's what kind of results can we generate? What kind of work can I do? You know, what kind of calculations can I make? What kind of answers can I come up with? And so that's the what we do. It's really based on the skills and the abilities and your education. But the soft skills, I put it under the bucket of how you do it. And so how do you go about generating results? How do you go about working with your teammates? And as an individual, if you go to a place where no one else wants to work with you, then it makes your job, makes it really hard for you to accomplish your goals and to get your work done. So it's really important in how you go about your work as well, because it doesn't really gain you much if you do a really great job on a project and has great results, but then you go to the next project and no one wants to work with you because you didn't treat people well, you didn't listen to them, you didn't treat people with respect. And those are things that are really, really important. They're really intangible. That's why I kind of call them soft, because it's not just an answer, but it's more about how you do your work every single day and how you show up. And at EQT, that's why teamwork and trust are two of our main values, because that really speaks to how we do our work every day.
Great, thank you so much. Now I want to talk to Joe Mallow a little bit. I know you're the managing director for a lot of different things, you know, permitting, design, maintenance, and construction. So I would like to know, you know, how you use STEM skills in your daily work, you know, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and maybe in particular, how technology has impacted the energy industry, especially recently.
Yeah, absolutely. Really, we use science, technology, engineering, math in everything that we do, in particular for for my department. So a lot of my department, we're involved with the civil site and roadway design aspect. So we're upgrading all the roadways to our sites. We're designing the well pads. So we use a lot of computer-aided drafting software applications such as Civil 3D, MicroStations, HydroCAD, that designs those sites, to so that we can operate safely and efficiently on those sites. We also utilize drone technology for a lot of our survey-related tasks. A lot of our construction equipment, some people don't know this, but a lot of our construction equipment have GPSs in those pieces of equipment. We upload the design files into those pieces of equipment. So we have very skilled operators that can operate that equipment, but having that capability of uploading those design files just gives them another tool to make sure that we're building those pads, exactly per design. We're not, out there making mistakes. Like it just increases our capability and our efficiency to build those pads. And really, technology is at the forefront of everything we do. We leverage our digital work environment every day. So we operate in a platform called Salesforce, and it really keeps us connected, and the ability to collaborate daily. It provides every team member a way to stay connected to our day-to-day operations.
Great, thank you so much. I would like to go over to Elizabeth actually now. And I know your job description is a little bit different than everyone else's. You're the director of HR. Could you maybe describe to me a little bit about the interviewing process, what you're looking for in new hires, maybe particularly soft skills? Just describe that a little bit for me, please.
Sure. Thanks for throwing me an easy one, Madison. The interviewing process at EQT has evolved recently as a result of our remote work environment due to the pandemic, but it generally involves an initial phone conversation with the HR recruiter and the candidate. And once that's occurred and we've decided that the candidate should progress to the next stage in the process, it's something that's called a WePal video screening. And that's an opportunity for EQT and the interviewing team to ask a series of questions electronically. And then the candidate logs into the WePal system and does a pre-recorded response for the EQT team then to see them back on the video replay. Once we've had an opportunity to review the video answers, then we can schedule the candidate for a full day of interviewing or a half of a day of interviewing, which usually consists with 4 or 5 people from the department where there's an opening and an HR person. And right now in the current world, we're doing that over WebEx, over the video. And at some point in the future, hopefully we'll return to normal and be able to do that face-to-face again, where we invite the candidate to one of our office locations to meet with the various interviewers and participate in the interview. And to answer the second part of your question in terms of what we're really looking for and what's important, we really like to see a candidate that knows about the company and has a true interest in the industry, in what we're doing, and has been able to demonstrate that through some of the answers that they're giving, something that they've seen in the company that they're excited about or want to learn more about, rather than a candidate that just comes and says, basically, I'm looking for a job. Tell me about this job. We love to see when a candidate just has that passion and drive to learn more when they come with a series of questions about the opportunity, about the company, and you can tell that they're just really hungry for the opportunity. That's really when you see the best candidates, in combination, of course, with their credentials and meeting the minimum qualifications from an education and experience perspective.
And since everyone watching is in high school, what courses, clubs, organizations, experience, and stuff like that would you recommend to a high school student who is interested in pursuing a career in the energy industry or even with EQT?
I think the first thing that a high school student should really consider is, first of all, what their interests are, and then second of all, their strengths. because the best way to set yourself up for success is to pursue a job and a career that really marries those two things together, so that you are enjoying your work every day for the duration of your career. And so there are, a number of STEM organizations, much like people that have enrolled in BotsIQ and participate like this, getting involved in STEM organizations, finding clubs and other teams to participate on that really strengthen teamwork skills, communication skills, some of those soft skills that the rest of the panelists have mentioned, I think really will set someone up for success when they're looking to pursue a career full time and they've had the opportunity to interact in those settings, or even take on leadership roles in those settings, even if that means being president of the Spanish club or something like that, where you've had the opportunity to take on a leadership role at the high school level and lead a team and then begin to translate that into your professional experience.
Thank you so much. I have another question for Julian. So whenever, you graduate college, you get your degree, but your education does not stop whenever you graduate. How would you say continuing your education and training is important in your career?
I think it's really, to me, it's critically important because things change really, really fast. And so you have to always stay on top of where technology is. And so first, that's really, really important. And then secondly, as a leader, you can never get stagnant at what you do. I'll come back to EQT's values because they're really important to me as well. And one of our values is evolution. And that's that idea that we have to continually get better, and you have to take that on both a professional level, which is technically how do you stay up with everything, what's going on in the industry. And then secondly, on a personal level, how do you continue to evolve and get better as a leader? And so for me, as I think about my career, and as I've been in oil and gas and the energy industry for over 20 years now, things have changed a lot in the 20 years that I've been in this industry. One of the things I like to tell my team all the time is this is 2021. It's not 1980. And so we need to run and operate our business like this is 2021. And the technology we have today is significantly different than we had way back then and 40 years ago. And so we have to adopt those new technologies. And from a leadership perspective, I'm sure Stephen and Joe can appreciate this as well, is we have to stay on top of what those technologies are. If we're talking about the higher end computing opportunities like cloud and edge computing or machine learning and artificial intelligence, the really cool stuff that Stephen showed in his video with that robotic arm, I don't think that was even a twinkle in anybody's eye probably 5 or 10 years ago. And now here it's in reality and being used, and it's definitely making a safer work environment. But as a leader, if he and his team weren't continually staying on top of technology, we never would have the opportunity to apply that to our operations. So we always have to be on top of those things so that we know where those opportunities are and then how we can implement those into our operation to make us safer and more effective. And so it's really important for us to stay on top of where technology is. And then from a leadership perspective, it's really important as well because our leadership styles have to evolve as time goes on. I think we'll always have those what I call non-negotiables, or things like our integrity and the courage to do what's right. Those things never change. But then other things do change. And an example I would use is being able to lead a workforce that's multi-generational. The team that I lead is a pretty big team, and I've got an age range that spans from early 20s to late 60s, and so it's a pretty wide range of people that I lead. And so, how should I relate to those people? The people who work for me. I can't treat everybody the same because everyone's going to be different, and then those generational differences have an impact on how people show up every day, and it impacts how they want to be treated at work and how they feel rewarded in the work that they do. And so as a leader, it's important for me to understand that. And the only way that I can do that is by continually learning, growing, and understanding what it means to be a leader. And I do that by a lot of reading. I'm a voracious reader, so I read a lot of leadership books. I read a lot of technical journals, and I also read a lot of stuff for fun, a lot of fictional things. So I think right now I'm in the middle of reading a book by Jane Austen. So I'm reading Pride and Prejudice right now. So it gives you a feel for the wide range of things that I like to read. But by staying up and continually learning is the only way you can stay in front of your competition and also help your company be the best that it can be. So you never can stop learning because once you stop, then you're stagnant. I think there's been a verbiage out there that if you're not growing, you're dying. And so it's like if you're not growing as a leader or not growing as a company, then there's only one alternative. There's no way to stay stagnant. And so that goes for everybody. So always continually learn and grow in everything that you do. kind of piggybacking off of what Elizabeth said earlier, is if you're focused on if you go into a career that's focused on the things that you like to do and the things that you're good at, it doesn't feel like work when you're learning, because you're excited about it and you just continue to dive into it and you just can't get enough of it.
Thank you very much. And you talked a lot about how the environment is changing, how technology is advancing so rapidly. How do you stay on top of prioritizing employee safety in an environment that is changing so much?
That's a great question, Madison. Safety is absolutely our number one priority. If people can't come to work every day and have the expectation and belief that they're going to be able to go home the exact same way that they showed up, then honestly, EQT really doesn't have any business business operating and being here in Pennsylvania, because it's important that we protect our people. And I say we do that using, we use programs and technology to do that. We have a program called Focus, which I think was running on the screen prior to us starting. Focus stands for Family First, which is that we care about everyone like they are family, regardless if you're an EQT employee or a vendor on one of our locations. O stands for Obligation, that we all have that obligation to work safe and keep others safe. Then communication is the C, which is having respectful conversations about what safety means and what our goals are. U is understanding, that we all understand what our safety goals are and how we all contribute to that safe workplace. And then lastly, S is for support, which means, we're all working together to create this safe work environment where no one gets hurt. And so to me, that's the foundation of our safety program and how we prioritize that day in, day out. We also provide what's called stop work authority to every person on one of our locations, that if something doesn't look right, you don't feel comfortable with the work that you're doing, you have the ability to raise your hand and say, hey, this doesn't feel safe, what are we doing? And the whole operation will shut down until everyone's comfortable with what we're doing, so that there's no miscommunication, and if someone doesn't know what they're doing, that they have the opportunity to ask those questions. So that's really important for us, and two of the main pillars of our safety program at EQT. In terms of technology, that we talk about the pandemic and everything that we've had come up over the course of the last year, and that's obviously been a difficult transition for all of us. But I'd say that EQT was one of the first organizations to say that we were going to go remote work with our workforce. You've heard Joe and I think Stephen talk about some of our digital work environment that really enabled us to leverage technology so that people could work from home and stay in a place where they could quarantine and not expose themselves potentially to COVID. It was really successful. I think we've seen as an organization, we've been able to continue to, if anything, continue to get better even through that. So that was one opportunity for us to leverage that platform and that technology to allow us to work remotely with really no hiccups. The engagement's been off the charts, and so that's been great. Secondly, things like a location like Stephen's got, we actually have where people badge in when they come onto the location. So what that allowed us to do was, utilizing the technology, allowed us to do contact tracing. So if someone was on location, if a positive case did come up, we had the ability to contact trace when that person was on our location. Who were they in contact with, allowed us to do those second contacts to prevent spread. And so utilizing that kind of tracing technology really helped us alleviate the concern of spread coming off of EQT locations in our workforce, whether it was an EQT employee or a vendor. And so places where we leverage technology to keep people safe.
Just to add on there, I think Julian brought up a ton of really good points there. And I think one of the things that really struck me listening to Julian was, a big challenge that I had coming out of school and going into the workplace was, what does learning really mean inside of the workplace? And so at the beginning of my career, I was really looking for training courses and a structured way, just like school, right, to continue my learning. And that's definitely part of it. It's you need to look for a place where you will get the proper training to understand what you're doing. But there's also something that I often overlooked. And when I came into the oil field went into a little bit of a slump, and all of my training classes got canceled my first year. And where I worked, my first job was actually to learn the piece of equipment. And so I actually had to jump on the piece of equipment, drive out to location, work these big machines, hammer things up together, troubleshoot them, very far from chemical engineering, right? And I thought, man, like, this is not what I studied. What am I doing here? And as I started to get into that mode and accept the fact that I'm not going to this school at the end of the year to further my engineering skills, I started to look around and understood that, these guys that are running these pieces of equipment and troubleshooting these things really were experts in themselves, and they were teachers themselves. And everything that I was facing every single day, if you looked at it properly, was actually a learning opportunity as well. And so don't overlook those types of learning opportunities when you're on the job. Don't just go through the motions, right? Really talk to the people that you're working with, the lady or gentleman that you're there that has done that piece of work for a long period of time, has a bank of knowledge inside of their head that doesn't exist in any textbook anywhere. And so, pulling that out as much as possible and being in a place, again, we go back to soft skills of, I saw lots of people who in the same situation as me either said, you know what, if I'm not going to school, I'm going to quit, I'm going to find another job, or they had a really bad attitude about being out and doing that work. But there were others that had a really positive attitude, and you could see the information flowing from the experts that were doing this work into their minds and understanding it better. And so when I finally did get to go to school, I understood it at a level that a lot of people didn't. And it helped me out way more to connect the physical world to the textbook and really understand that process much deeper than I ever would have if I didn't have that opportunity. And then when you take that into your further career, and as you go forward and you think about, the safety aspect of it all and how we deploy our processes, it allows you to understand it at a deep level and then say, and be brave enough to say, why are we doing it this way? Because that's truly the power of a different generation coming into the workforce. Is that, what, Julian and I've been, we've all been doing this for a couple of decades, and we go in this and we're kind of used to the things that we see out there, but it may not make much sense. I know that, I have a son who's just about to go into college this year. He's a senior in high school, and him and I see the world differently. Okay. When I see like TikTok, I don't understand it at all. And he certainly understands it and he knows how to use it, but I cannot. And I think he would be terrified if I started to try to use it. So I don't. But that different perspective on life really can then translate into the work world, where you can say, hey, that doesn't make sense to me. Can you explain it to me? And maybe even come up with your own ideas, how it could be done better using your frame of reference, your background, and your access and knowledge of technology that we may not have or even have a concept of. So really important that way as well.
Great, thank you so much. Just quick question for Joe again. Given your work that you do, is there any advice that you have for students pursuing a career with EQT in terms of, maybe someone coming out of engineering school, unsure what it is that they really want to do?
Yeah, I mean, getting those core fundamentals from obtaining your engineering degree is one thing, but then really deciding what you want to do, just you kind of feel it in your gut, really. I mean, it's really just, you go into your profession, you start learning more about, what you learned in school, but now you're gaining that experience. Like Steven said, talking to people around you, learning from folks around you that's been in your profession, ask them questions about, hey, what does this look 5 years from now? What does this career look like? It's really talking to your peers, getting their perspective and their, experiences to really, kind of form, your opinion of, okay, do I want to pursue this? I always tell the story whenever I was whenever I obtained my degree, I started out in transportation engineering. I wanted to be a transportation engineer. I wanted to, lead heavy, highway projects. My career path went in a completely different direction just because I was exposed to the oil and gas industry. And as soon as I was exposed to that, I was hooked, from there forward. And really it was from that point on, it was just learning more about what I wanted to do, and really just communicating to those around me, learning from those around me, and just continuing to work towards, that career path.
Thank you. And I do have another question for Elizabeth. Maybe you could help everyone understand. I know a lot of students maybe don't know what EQT does. They might say, this isn't the kind of job that I want to do. But I think students maybe don't understand the broadness of how many different types of careers are involved in EQT's business model. So could you maybe talk about a little bit about the variety of different types of people who come through that you meet in the interviewing process and in your work in HR or anything like that?
Sure. These guys on the panel have already somewhat set the stage for this in that their backgrounds are all very varied. And while people may think that careers at EQT mean a petroleum engineering degree, and that's really all we look for, that really couldn't be further from the truth. I'll touch specifically on STEM, since I know that that's a lot of what the audience is looking for, but we see people with science and technology and engineering and math backgrounds come into all different types of functions in EQT, from coming right out of high school or from a technical school and moving into our production operations area, where they have the opportunity to work directly with the operations and with Julian and his team. We have people coming into IT with that type of background. One of the emerging areas for the organization as we've been evolving and leaning more on technology is in data analytics and business intelligence and data science. All of those areas have very varied backgrounds in terms of what people study in school or what types of post-secondary education they have to move into that type of a field. We have GIS, people that have studied mapping and geography in school and want to work on looking at our well sites from a different perspective and plotting out the locations. That's a completely different subset of our IT department. We have people that have engineering backgrounds that actually go on and get an MBA and move into finance, where they're working more on the business side of the organization and preparing materials for our investors or working on the entire company's strategy, because they have an understanding of not only what we do as a company and what it means to be a production company, but also where we're going and how to get us there. And so they're really taking those two areas of the science and the business and pursuing a completely different career path. So we have all walks of people coming through EQT with all different types of backgrounds. And you also meet someone that went to school for criminal justice, something completely unrelated to anything the EQT does. And they'll have an experience similar to Joe's, where they just get exposure to a type of a job or the industry like EQT and realize that that's where their passion is. And so they work to get themselves into a career at EQT rather than criminal justice that they initially planned on pursuing. So it really can be anyone and everyone that can pursue an EQT career, just depending on, again, your interests and the drive that you have to move into a type of role that we offer.
Great, thank you. And I'm going to ask this one to Julian, but anyone, if you have a experience that you want to share, feel free to jump in. How can a student develop what would be considered engineering skills without having access to engineering classes? Like I had my drafting class, and I also had BotsIQ. Maybe if a student goes to a school that doesn't necessarily offer that, how can they still develop skills that would help them in an engineering field?
I think it's a really good question, Madison. I know that for me, growing up as a kid, things just like easy, I'll say easy, but taking things apart and putting them back together is one of the things as a kid I did a lot of. So I know there are multiple radios and televisions and things around my house that got destroyed as part of my experimentation. But just trying to understand the inner workings of things and how do they work, gears and how they come together. Taking apart not a digital clock, obviously, but the old school mechanical clocks was really cool in terms of seeing how all the gears work and how they connect with one another and how things move and how if one thing moved here, what did it do on the other side? So understanding those cause and effects were things that I would do as a growing up. I think we've had conversations around classes that really impacted us. Personally, I enjoyed chemistry and being able to see the different reactions and how things react with one another, the cause and effect behind that, the balancing of those equations in class was something I really enjoyed. I talked about physics and that same kind of cause and reaction. So just that kind of thought process and mentality, I think classes really open your eyes to what that looks like. So those courses that are offered in class, take those. And then outside of that, the opportunity to talk about things like BotsIQ that are pretty cool and fun that help you see that. And I think even just from a curiosity perspective, if there's something that you're curious about, I think certainly something that's available today that wasn't available to me when I was growing up was the ability to just hop online and get on YouTube. And there's pretty much a video for everything out there. Just for me personally, my son had expressed some interest in neuroscience the other day, and I'm like, I don't even know anything. I don't know half of anything about brain surgery. So we started looking up some videos. I got a little bit gruesome, but it was at the same time really interesting, and I learned a lot out of that. And for him, he also sparked an interest in him to continue to pursue some of those things. And so I would say just explore your curiosity and those things that you do find interest in. Don't be scared to go and hop out there and take a chance, because sometimes one of the things that keep us back from maybe pursuing those learnings and really going forward is just a fear of the unknown and a fear of not knowing something and potentially looking stupid. And for me, I look stupid every single day because I'm asking questions and tell my team, if I'm asking a dumb question, it's just me trying to learn. And so that's part of the process. And so don't be scared to learn because it's going to make you better for it in the future. But I would love to hear anything that Stephen and Joe have to add on to that. But for me, it's just explore that curiosity. You have technology at your hands. And like I said, things that are out there now, it's just so easy to access information today than it was in the past. And so take advantage of that and really get out there and just soak it all up today while you can.
Yeah, to add on to that, I consider part of being an engineer as being resourceful. So, growing up, whenever I was in high school, we weren't given a lot of the drafting classes, that kind of stuff that are available now. So I really focused on the core science, math, making sure that, I was good at that I was focused on that. But really, it's like Julian said, be resourceful, look for stuff online. I'm telling my age here, but there wasn't a lot of online stuff whenever I was, in high school. There is now. So, definitely explore, be resourceful, find those, videos, just, that's part of being an engineer, really. Part of that problem solving skill set is being resourceful. So definitely don't be afraid to look and find stuff on your own, really.
And I think just my point of view on that is exactly the same here, right? The curiosity is the big part of engineering, and be willing to look for that answer. I look at the STEM skill set as words in a vocabulary. Okay, you have to learn them. They may not be that fun to learn, but you have to do them because you can't form a sentence without that vocabulary, right? But those words alone are no use without a sentence or a paragraph to communicate what you're trying to say. So, that the curiosity is really what takes the STEM vocabulary and turns it into something real, like a real sentence, something that you can use. So think of it that way, right? When you're looking at your classes, try to connect it to something in the real world that makes that connection, that turns that vocabulary piece, those words, into a full sentence for you. And just like Julian and Joe said, really good resources at hand today to be able to do just that. So take full advantage of the technology that's in front of you to take those STEM pieces and turn them into something that you understand and that's real for you.
Thank you so much. And Julian, what you said about the destroying electronics, I'm definitely guilty of that too. My teachers from high school and my parents both know that I, have a track record of taking things apart and maybe not quite putting them back together the right way, but you get a little better at it the more you do it. So BotsIQ definitely gave me an outlet for that, at least.
Awesome. Madison, I joined you guys back, but that's actually a great point about BotsIQ, and it's a constructive way to learn to take things apart and put it back together for sure. So what a wonderful conversation we had today. We did have a couple additional questions come in. I feel like, Madison, that the last question that you just spoke with the panelists about really addressed one of them. That was a question about how to, if you're not in BotsIQ, how do you learn those skills? I think that was great. Thank you guys so much. But this question, and maybe something that Elizabeth can address, it actually, I'll read the question and explain something just briefly about it. But the question from a student says, with COVID-19, it's been hard to serve time in my community for volunteer hours. This question was directed towards, is it important for college, which unfortunately we can't address specifically today since none of us are from a college, at least not that I'm aware of. But from a business perspective, we talked a little bit and we saw in the slideshow ahead of time that volunteerism and community support is something really important to EQT. But how are you guys managing it with COVID-19 as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we are fortunate to have Ellen and some other members of our team really shepherding along that process to keep us connected with communities. But just a couple of things that have happened recently where we've been able to stay involved despite the current world environment is last week was Random Acts of Kindness Day. And we were encouraged to perform an act. And so you didn't need to be in a crowd or among a group. And employees took the opportunity to, for example, leave treats in their mailbox for their postal carrier, to drop off food at an animal shelter, to take in lunch to a pediatrician's office. Just small acts like that where they're able to perform service for the community in a safe manner. We also have been doing a number of other small events where we'll find populations within the organization to do work at a food bank or go volunteer in a small group where they can be socially distanced and masked and still be able to serve that way. So we've definitely been creative over the past year with virtual volunteerism and acts of service in the community and trying to keep up with the pace that we would have otherwise in a non-COVID world.
That's awesome. And it really speaks to EQT's value that, community is important and you're not going to let the pandemic slow you down. That's great.
That's right.
Awesome. This question maybe for Stephen, but maybe others could share a little too. We got a lot of cool things around that robot at the beginning. Obviously, it was really cool. So thanks for sharing that with us. But a couple questions around it. Is it mobile? Is it fixed at one spot? Is this something that could go other places?
Yeah, that's actually a really good point on the mobility of that unit. One of the things that's great about it is that it actually is just pulled behind a truck. So you can move it around really, really easily. You saw a lot of the big pieces of iron that are out there that are kind of bolted all together. Those are really hard to move. And, one of the challenges that we had before was, when we move to wells that are further away, it took us a long time, sometimes 24 to 48 hours just to move. And so everyone was just kind of waiting until we got all that there. And then, it was a lot of hard work, a lot of manual labor to get it over there. Now you saw the arm moving and that was sped up a little bit, but for it to go to what we call its home position where it's folded down and sitting down in the truck bed, that takes 2 minutes, right?
Oh, wow.
And then you just hook up a truck, move it over, and you're done what can take up to 48 hours in the matter of 30 minutes, and you're ready to go again, right? So yeah, definitely mobile, definitely movable, and an innovative solution to all that manual labor.
I'd like to see that driving down the highway, I think. That'd be pretty cool. Is this technology that EQT is using, is that something that, are you guys ahead of the game? Is this something that's being used at other places? Like how does that compare?
We're constantly evolving new technologies, and we were the actual first people in the United States to try that piece of machinery. Early on when I came to EQT, we were looking for innovative solutions, and we got in contact with the manufacturers and went out to Colorado to actually see that piece of equipment in prototype phase. And so we were heavily invested from the beginning and all the way to field testing. And one of the things about engineering is that, you know, you got to find the right solution for the operation. Sometimes that takes a little bit of trial and error. And sometimes the things that are really, really look really good at the beginning may not end up being working in production. So we did trial it out, and we did go through the first field phase of it, and it is now commercial. But one of the problems that it does have is that it doesn't have a good solution to make sure that we don't spill any water at any point in time. And so, you know, we are very, very sensitive to the fact that, you know, we have stakeholders all around. Just like Elizabeth was saying, you know, we truly believe in community and our impacts on them. So when we saw that, you know, the spill mitigation in that piece of equipment wasn't up to what we wanted and what our stakeholders and our communities would want, we had to move to a different technology. But we still stay in contact with them because it's really cool technology, and they're working for a solution, and all their engineers are working on a solution, and I'm sure they're going to come up with one so that we can use that efficiently and stay within our guidelines of spill mitigation and keeping our communities and stakeholders in mind.
That's awesome. I like that you aren't compromising for the technology with a value that, again, EQT places very highly, which is your sustainability and environmental impact. That's great. And I kind of like the last question on it. I just saw a headline, and I think we had it in the pre-event slideshow about EQT being the first company to implement an all-electric wireline unit. I don't know if any, I didn't prep you guys with this, so this is off the cuff question, but are any of you involved in that? And can anybody speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's part of my operations there. You know, it's actually an initiative to get everything on our location running on electricity. So, you know, again, talking about stakeholders and what we do for the community, we're very, very sensitive to the fact that we have a huge role and responsibility to understand our impacts on the environment, right? And what we do there. And one of the great challenges when we came in, when I talked about this being the biggest challenge of my career, was the fact that, you know, maybe we weren't traditionally as an industry, maybe we didn't take into consideration some of the factors that we talk about a lot and really put it into action on location. And so one of the things that we did is we converted all of our frac fleets to electric. And what that means is that you have to generate electricity on location. And I think everybody has heard about the different forms of electricity and how we can get there, and some that are cleaner and some that are not. What we decided is that we're going to use natural gas because it is actually a really, really clean way to make electricity. And we have natural gas feeding a jet engine on our location. It's a turbine, a huge jet engine, and that thing puts out 35 megawatts of power onto our location. And that 35 megawatts of power is available to everyone on location. And we do that very, very cleanly because we've even taken that technology and look at the exhaust stack and decreased our CO2 emissions by injecting water by over 72%. Our greenhouse gas emissions have come down that much. And so part of that initiative is how do we power everything on location with electricity? And there's lots of pieces of equipment like that wireline. If you guys remember way at the beginning, there was a gun that was transported down the wellbore and it made cracks and it started the hydraulic fracturing process. Well, that piece of equipment was typically run on diesel. And so a lot of the diesel stuff is really loud. It pollutes more than natural gas does. And so we found a way, working with some of our partners, to convert that to completely electric. So same technology that you see in Tesla, the same motors that you see in Tesla, sometimes literally the same motors that drive a Tesla car are on our pieces of equipment now to drive our motors and push them forward in a more modern and a cleaner way, and one that's less noise pollution as well. So that's how that all came about. It's all part of the electric fleet.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for explaining that. And again, it's just a really impressive technology, and it's pretty cool. So that is actually all our questions for today. So I would like to thank our participants for participating today and sharing a little bit about your story with our students and attendees. I'd like to say a special thank you to Ellen Rossi, the president of the EQT Foundation, for her support in helping to make today's career panel happen. And just as a reminder, if you're a high school student, a senior from Greene or Washington County, Pennsylvania, who's interested in a career in the oil and gas industry, if you check out the YouTube video description today, there is a link to the EQT scholarship program for both Washington and Greene counties. That deadline is quickly approaching, so don't delay. I'd also like to thank our teachers and students who joined us today for the virtual event, and mention that BotsIQ is hosting another virtual manufacturing tour tomorrow with Rittal, which is located in Donora, Pennsylvania. A link to our event page where you can find out more details about the tour and other events that we've hosted in the past and will have in the future can be found in the YouTube video description as well. Lastly, I encourage you to connect with BotsIQ on social media. We have handles on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And it's a great way for you to learn about future virtual events and live events, including our exciting competitions that we'll be hosting in May this year. Thank you again, everyone, for participating and for joining us today. This concludes our event. Have a wonderful day.